A man will be sentenced today for killing his ex-girlfriend on Valentine's Day. It all happened back in 2009.
James Carter could get up to 65 years in prison for murder later today, but just as important as making sure he never hurts anybody again is the fact that this case actually helped strengthen state laws to try to prevent anybody else from doing what he did.
In 2009, on Valentine's Day, Tiana Notice's life was brutally taken away from her by her ex-boyfriend James Carter. In the months leading up to her murder, Tiana went to the police station over 33 times to report multiple violations of the restraining order she had against him, only to be sent away and told by the officers it was a long weekend and they were short-staffed. When James Carter left a handwritten letter on her door, she went directly to the police with the evidence she needed that he had been close to her home and to ask for some protection. They finally took some interest in her claims and told her they would look into it, but the police did not arrest him. Instead, they called him and asked him for a sample of his handwriting. Having been tipped off by the police, an angry James Carter got a knife, went to her apartment, and lay in wait until she returned home. This is the tragic story of Tiana Notice's death and how her murder could have been prevented. Tiana Angelique Notice was born on February 4, 1984, to her parents Alvin Notice and Kathy Lewis in Connecticut. Tiana had 3 brothers, Tyrone, Tyrell, and Christian, and she was very much loved by her whole family. She was a very artistic child who had a love for music. She was always spending her time in choirs and singing groups, and she loved to write her own songs and poetry. Growing up, she was known for being someone with a smile that would light up a room. Tiana was incredibly bright and ended up doing her first year of college at the same time she was completing her last year in high school. She graduated from the University of Hartford with a degree in political science, and she was just starting her master's degree in Plainville, Connecticut. Her mother Kathy said Tiana loved to argue, so she always encouraged her to be a lawyer so that she could debate with people for a living. According to her family, the most important things in her life were God, family, and friends. In 2007, Tiana met a man called James Carter II online. She had just come out of a 5-year relationship with her old college sweetheart, so she was not looking for anything too serious. She agreed to meet James for a date, however, and they met out in a public place. Her mother, Kathy Lewis, said, "I don't know what she saw in him because I never met him in person. I only saw photos of him and I immediately disliked him. You may want to call it mother's intuition." At first, James appeared calm and level-headed. He told Tiana that he owned his own home and was an executive at an insurance company and didn't have kids but wanted them at some point. James also gave Tiana a phone that was on his plan, and he bought her tires for her car. At the time, Tiana believed his lies, and she thought he was just a great partner that was being nice to her. 6 months into their relationship, however, the red flags began to show. James was sentenced to 5 months in prison for the domestic abuse case of a previous girlfriend, and Tiana learned he had a rap sheet for numerous other violent crimes, including assault. After his release from prison in early 2008, the relationship started to crumble even more, and Tiana suspected that James was cheating on her. She thought it was best to end her relationship with him and to move on. Immediately after Tiana broke up with James, she started being harassed by him, and he wouldn't leave her alone. Kathy Lewis, Tiana's mother, said, "He started stalking her, showing up wherever she was, whether out with her friends, she was out grocery shopping, at work." Tiana knew James had a history of abuse, so out of concern she went to the police and filed a restraining order against him. In January 2009, James went to the Plainville police to also file a restraining order against Tiana because he was so furious that she had taken one out against him. James claimed that Tiana had assaulted him and that she had kicked his headlights and punched him in the face. And so, the police filed the report, despite James not having any injuries. On January 13, 2009, Tiana went back to the police and said she had been receiving some harassing emails and believed they were from James. The police told her that unless she had proof it was him, they couldn't do anything. Tiana then began receiving more emails from a woman named Jessica Banderas, as well as from James directly. The woman in the emails claimed to be an ex-girlfriend of James, and the emails she sent were very nasty and threatening towards Tiana. Some of the emails from James said, "Trust me, baby girl, you are going to lose everything. As God is my witness, punishment is on the way, so be prepared. You will have bad luck, you hear me? Remember this email when karma bites you in the ass." These emails, however, did provide her with the proof she needed, and so she printed them out and went to the Plainville Police Department to report James for violating the restraining order. The police, however, just told her that the emails were non-threatening. James continued harassing Tiana with phone calls, texts, and emails, and she kept returning to the police station to report him to no avail. Tiana's mother said, "I didn't know why they didn't take my daughter seriously. She went and visited the police station 33 times in 6 weeks. Tiana's mother further said that James was stalking Tiana by sitting outside her apartment building in his car and following her when she went places. Frustratingly, the police still did not take action against James. Tiana felt completely helpless and that no one was taking her seriously. Kathy said that one day she received a call from her daughter who was crying hysterically. Tiana had told her, "Mum, you won't believe these people. They treated me like dirt. They didn't believe anything I told them. They thought I was lying, and one officer accused me of having a fake restraining order." Kathy then spoke with the sergeant directly, who told her that nothing was going to happen to her daughter. She then responded to him, "Look, I don't want my daughter to become a statistic, and I'm telling you now, if anything happens to my daughter, you better move to another planet." In early February 2009, even though things were looking up for Tiana, who had decided to give her old relationship another chance, and it was going well to the point where they were discussing marriage, things would take a turn for the worst. Tiana found her car vandalized outside of her apartment. All 4 tires had been slashed. Once again, Tiana went to the police to report the incident, but was told there was no way they could prove it was James. Tiana told this to her father Alvin, and they came up with a plan of how to get evidence. They put up a security system outside her house, so if James came near to it, they could prove he had violated the restraining order. Tiana was so afraid for her life at this point that her and her father spent 4 hours together role-playing scenarios where someone was attacking her and how she could defend herself and where she could run to if it were to happen. On the 13th of February 2009, Tiana was at work when she received a number of calls from James. This time she had a witness, her co-worker. She called the police, but they told her she had to call the local police in the town that she worked in. She went into the station after work, and the police told her they had a hard time believing that the restraining order was real. They told her to have the Plainville police fax over a copy of the order. When she returned home that night, around 7:20 p.m., she found a handwritten note from James begging her to take him back. Tiana thought she had all the proof she needed to finally get the police to arrest James. The note said, "Tiana, forgive me. I never cheated on you. If I'm lying, may God take my life. Forgive me for everything else I have done." Unfortunately, it would turn out that the tape had run out in the security system outside her house, so there was no physical footage. She did, however, have the handwritten letter, so on the 14th of February 2009, she took it directly to the police station. To Tiana's relief, the Plainville police agreed to do a handwriting analysis on the note. Tiana and her family were very close to celebrating because they were confident that perhaps they could have him arrested, and her father told her not to go anywhere near her home until this was done. Shockingly, the Plainville police would then directly call James to ask him to come in and give a handwriting sample. Later that day, Tiana went home thinking she'd be safe. She just needed to get a few things from her house before going to spend the weekend at her mum's. Having been tipped off by the police that Tiana had gone to them with the note, James was angry and was waiting for her at her building. As Tiana got to her front door, James stepped out of the shadows and pulled out a knife. He stabbed her about 20 times, twice directly in the heart, and then he proceeded to drive away. Incredibly, Tiana found the strength to call 911, and at 9:41 p.m. she told them,
"I'm bleeding to death."
Where are you?
140 Whiting Street on the balcony.
140, stay on the phone with me.
My ex-boyfriend just stabbed me to death.
Read this.
My ex-boyfriend.
140 Whiting.
During the 911 call, Tiana was heard fading fast, and she lost consciousness. One of her neighbors heard her screams, and they saw James's car driving away. Tiana was rushed to the hospital, and heartbreakingly she died just 10 days after her 25th birthday. Kathy Lewis said, "The team of doctors came in and they told me we did everything we could. We even did hand massage on her heart, but she lost too much blood and we couldn't revive her." Her father Alvin said, "So I went and identified her. She's on the table. I looked at her. There were stab wounds everywhere, and the first thing comes to mind. Who did it? Didn't have to think too long. I know who did it." Early the next morning, James Carter II was arrested and charged on suspicion of Tiana Notice's murder. In the weeks before she was killed, Tiana had filed over 30 complaints to the police, and nothing had been done. In October 2011, James's trial began. There was a mountain of evidence against him. He was seen on the surveillance camera that Tiana's dad had installed. Tiana had identified her killer, and James's brother and his girlfriend testified that James confessed to stabbing Tiana that night. James Carter was found guilty and sentenced to 60 years in prison without the possibility of parole.
60 years is not enough, but I understand it's the law. But to me, 60 years is not enough.
In court, her father read a poem written by Tiana called Chapter Closed, which was about her leaving James. In the poem, she wrote about being released from his abuse, anger, temper, torture, control, and jealousy. In the years since Tiana's death, her father Alvin has made authorities in Connecticut and other states take the deadly dangers of domestic violence seriously. Alvin was determined to fix the broken system which had failed his daughter. He wanted to do this so no one else's child would be murdered like his beloved daughter. I really wanted to get to the bottom of it. Looking at the face value of what was going on, I realized that there was a system failure. More action from the police, more action from legislators, more action from the courts. Both her parents, Alvin and Kathy, formed the Tiana Notice Foundation with the help of Connecticut State Senator May Flexer and Karen Jarmuck, a former state legislator and now head of the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And through all of this, laws have been toughened to prevent domestic violence murders. We started a pilot program for GPS monitoring, which was largely connected to Tiana's tragic murder. The GPS monitoring is put in place when the judicial system determines that an abuser is very high risk. They look at particularly the issue of lethality and trying to assess whether or not the abuser exhibits the traits that often leads to a murder. So through that system, the victim is alerted when the offender is walking within a certain distance of their home, of their workplace, of their family members' homes. Alvin, Tiana's father, had said, if James had had a GPS on his person, Tiana would have known he was by her house and she might still be alive. Following her murder, Tiana's estate filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the officers who handled the complaints against James Carter II. A jury agreed with the family, awarding them a $10 million settlement after both police departments were found negligent in this case. The murder of Tiana Notice could have been prevented. She was felled by so many people. How could two police departments not care that she was being stalked and that she was scared for her life? That she had come and spoken to them on over 30 different visits? They didn't take her claims against James Carter seriously, even though he had a record for domestic abuse. Honestly, this case makes me so angry. But the work that her parents, Alvin and Kathy, are doing in order to make changes in the laws and highlighting the dangers of domestic violence is probably saving hundreds of lives.